what has to be made clear to President Putin is that his dream of restoring the old Soviet Union simply is not possible. It's unrealistic, it's wrong, it's evil, and to do so by force is absolutely unacceptable to the rest of the world.
And I'm joined now by Michael Binyon of The Times, former foreign and diplomatic correspondent across Europe, Russia, and now a leader writer in Kyiv, by Inna Sovsun, a member of the Ukrainian parliament, and in a moment, Lucy Fisher, who'll be joining us, who is actually in the audience there at Westminster and will be able to tell us about the atmosphere there. But Michael, if I could come to you first, I think the main thrust, we'll come to the planes perhaps a bit later, but the main thrust of the speech there was very much Volodymyr Zelensky setting up this notion that this is not a fight between Ukraine and Russia. This is a fight for freedom and democracy everywhere.
Absolutely. It was a masterful speech. It was extremely clever, in which he presented the war as a challenge of humanity against evil, of the need for all good people, all world countries that support freedom to come together in support of Ukraine's fight. He was witty, he was clever, he showed how grateful Ukraine is for the support it has already received, and he pitched for further support in a very subtle, clever, but absolutely straightforward way. And I think he really got the audience on his side.
You say a subtle way, wings for freedom.
That's right.
Not exactly subtle.
Well, no, but it was clever because it was witty, because it came on the back of this idea of presenting a pilot's helmet to the speaker. I mean, a nice gesture with those words, wings for freedom, on the helmet. And he made light of it, but it's deadly serious.
But that's what I wanted to go on to next. I mean, he described the king as an Air Force pilot and every Air Force pilot in Ukraine as a king. It does highlight, really, doesn't it, how essential the Air Force and planes are at the moment to the battle effort.
Absolutely. Well, they and everyone are expecting a big Soviet, not Soviet anymore, but the Soviet-style invasion of Ukraine from the Russian forces. Sometime in the next few weeks, it's been pretty clear they're gathering equipment and everything for a massive campaign. And the Ukrainians at the moment don't yet have those essential Western tanks in place. They need something to defend themselves. Aircraft fighters are the best way of trying to stop the bombardment that is likely to come, and they need that as quickly as possible.
But there has been reluctance, hasn't there, to provide that air cover? Why is that? And do you think that President Zelensky is any closer to achieving it, that coalition that he's after?
Well, he's a bit closer, but as you say, there has been reluctance. The reluctance is because this is a step that takes NATO and all the NATO members much more closely involved in direct action against the Russians. And that has always been, for NATO, a bit of a red line. This is a feeling we will do what we can to support the Ukrainians. We are not going to engage ourselves in a direct fight with the Russians. This idea of sending planes to Ukraine arose fairly soon at the start of the war, and most countries, apart from Poland, said they weren't going to do it. And I'm still not sure that there is the support for actually sending jet fighters to Ukraine.
Let me bring in Inna Sovsun, a member of the Ukrainian parliament. Inna, you will have been listening to President Zelensky's speech there. How will it be received in Ukraine? And in terms of the priorities he identifies, how imperative are they? Hello, Inna. I think we're having a struggle with Inna's line there. Hopefully we'll get hold of her in a moment. Michael, in your opinion, how will it play? I mean, it doesn't feel like that was a speech for Ukraine, was it?
No.
That was a speech very much aimed just for the UK, or are we talking about Western allies?
UK and the Western allies in general, but he is going to make another speech, we think, very soon in Brussels, and he will be talking not only to the Parliament, but to EU leaders. And so he'll probably convey the same message, but tailor it a little bit more to the Europeans. It's the same message. We need your support. I think that's what the Ukrainians wanted him to say in Britain. They wanted him to pitch for what they need in terms of defensive equipment, weapons, planes, tanks, everything they can get. And I think they'll be very pleased. They also will recognise that he is a natural orator, that his speech is extremely well pitched. It played very well to the people he was trying to convince. It played well to Parliament. He praised the British. He recorded, he remembered Churchill and historical events that the British are proud of. And that's a clever way of being as persuasive as he was.
I think we do have Ina Sovson on the line now. What will be made of that speech in Ukraine, and how imperative this Wings for Freedom? Perhaps you can elaborate on why air cover is so important right now.
Yes, first of all, thank you very much for covering this. And of course, we are following the news about the president's visit to London very closely, which for us as well was a surprise visit as well, of course, due to security reasons. And of course, the president is doing that in order to mobilize support for Ukraine, because indeed we are in a very unprotected situation, particularly if we talk about air. Right now it's about -5, -6 in Kiev. It's pretty cold. What we are concerned with is, of course, that every time it gets colder in Ukraine, the Russians launch yet another airstrikes on our energy infrastructure. That is why support from the air is important for civilian population, but also, and probably not less, but even more important, is we need support from the air. We need air defense for our military. They cannot progress further. They cannot take back our land if the Russians control the air. I do think that we all know that from historical examples that you can basically only go on offensive, which we need in order to free or to liberate our territories, if you can cover the air. If you can't do that, you will be just losing the lives of your soldiers without any result.
There's a feeling that Russia will soon launch a fresh offensive. They appear to have stepped up shelling in recent days. There's been an enormous loss of Russian fighters' lives in the last few days. What's the mood in Kyiv, Ina?
Well, people are asking around if we expect yet another attack. There is some information around that maybe they will try to attack Kyiv again. That is one of the biggest concerns here. But I'm not seeing people fleeing the city again. Of course, people are more prepared, so they all have their full gas of tanks in their cars, and then they have their backpacks with their most important things ready. But it's not like people are panicking. We understand that attack is possible. It's even likely. But the question also is whether Russians have the capacity to launch a big attack. And the most important scenario is that they will try to take the whole of the Donetsk region, and that would be the maximum that they can probably achieve given the military capabilities they have at the moment.
Michael, we were talking there about what Russia's likely to do next. I mean, that's guesswork, that's for sure. But what do you think Putin will have made of this surprise visit from President Zelensky to the UK?
Oh, he will immediately brand Britain as the principal aggressor behind the Ukraine's fight. He will say that Britain has committed itself to a direct attack on Russia, that as one of the stronger hardline NATO members, Britain is trying to set the tone for an aggressive NATO campaign against Russia, exactly as he has said before, and as he probably expected. And I think it will be no surprise to him that Zelensky came to London before going elsewhere, before going to Brussels, because Britain and America, which he has already visited on his very first visit abroad, have been the two principal backers of Ukraine's fight and have provided most of the weapons.
I did want to ask you about that, the significance of Zelensky coming to London, not Paris or Berlin. What does it say about the European Union's response to what's happening in Ukraine?
Well, the Ukrainians have been grateful, but they feel the Europeans could have done a little bit more. Particularly, they worry that they've been dragging their feet. I mean, they've been accusing Germany quite openly of being slow. I mean, the Germans have promised a lot, but it hasn't really all got there, and it's been a bit slow, and particularly the row over whether or not the Germans would supply these vital Leopard 2 tanks. That was a thing that upset the Ukrainians, feeling that their appeal was falling on deaf ears. Britain was the first country to actually say it will offer tanks. It offered these 14 Challengers. I mean, in themselves, that's not going to change the course of the war, but it's a symbolic first step, and it was partly that was responsible for galvanizing the other Europeans to say, yes, we too will supply tanks.
President Zelensky made a very clear connection between this being a battle. I spoke to Michael about this a moment ago. This being a battle for freedom, for democracy. This is not a battle between Ukraine and Russia, although Ukraine are obviously the nation being attacked. But this is a battle for values that we all believe in. Is that a sense that Ukrainian people have as well, or are they more preoccupied with, saving their country?
Before I start answering your question, if you hear the weird sound in the background, that is literally the air raid alert that just started.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, you must get yourself to safety then.
I think I have 2-3 minutes before anything can happen, but that is just exactly what I was saying, is that because it got colder, the chances of another air raid attacks increase. And I didn't expect that to happen during the interview itself, but that is the reality we live under.
Well, please go and get yourself to safety, and we'll talk to you another time. I'd much prefer to know that you were in an air raid shelter than talking to me, though I'm very grateful to you for joining us today on this rather historic day with President Zelensky's address to the UK Parliament. I mean, Michael, in his position there with the air raid sirens going off, very much backs up what Vitaly Klitschko has been saying in the Times today, the mayor of Kyiv, of course, saying that Putin still wants Kyiv. He's warning it might not even be war, but genocide. Do you think that is fair?
I think it is a fair assessment. It's a symbolic victory if the Russians can take the capital. It would be a difficult thing for the Russians to bomb it to bits, because Kyiv for Russia is also of symbolic and historic importance. It's where Christianity in Russia began, or in Rus as it was then known. And so for them and for the Orthodox Church, it's an important city. So they'll try to take it if they can without actually smashing it to bits. But they clearly would like the symbolism of capturing, or at least controlling, the capital, because that would then put them in a position to dictate terms. And I think, the dramatic moment we just heard, the air raid sirens going, it just shows that this is something right now happening as their president is speaking to Britain.
You've studied Russia, a great deal in the course of your career. How imperative do you think it is that Ukraine wins this war, to the point that President Zelensky's making about freedom and democracy? I mean, obviously that serves the Ukrainian cause well, but is it also actually accurate?
Well, what has to be made clear to President Putin is that his dream of restoring the old Soviet Union simply is not possible. It's unrealistic, it's wrong, it's evil, and to do so by force is absolutely unacceptable to the rest of the world. And that, if that means that he has to be militarily defeated, I'm actually not sure that is really possible. I mean, Russia is a very big country, and it's now seeing this as a war of Russia against the world. It's putting itself in the position of Russia as it was facing Hitler, almost alone in those days. So I think the Russians are not going to stop, and they're not going to give up. But if they can be brought to the point where they will stop trying to take over the entire country and will negotiate something, which may be a very long time, or whether Putin himself can be removed or forced down. I'm not optimistic that a more flexible person would come in his place, though. I think the hardliners are in the ascendant.
Well, sobering words there, but thank you very much for joining me. Michael Binyon of The Times, and Ines Sovson, a member of the Ukrainian Parliament, giving